by saying that I am involved in doing practitioner research, and basically practitioner research is the teacher and the researcher investigating, in this case, my own context, and having these different roles at the same time, and being a learner at the same time, exploring issues in the classroom. So some of the benefits of practitioner research, as I have just said, are, well, one of them is that I can get insights into my own practice, and I can develop with the students together. Some other of the benefits is, well, building communities of practice. I think that by developing a very good rapport with the students, working all together for a long period of time, we can continue developing understandings even after the module. And so I think that there's this potential for building communities of practice with the students, and even inviting them to give talks with me, for example, all together in conferences. This is something that I've done in the past, and I know of other people who have done that as well. And I intended to do it today, but the students were with exams this week, so unfortunately they couldn't come. But for the future, I might do that. Some of the criticism of practitioner research are the difficulty in replicating, in generalizing it, and the difficulty in publishing it. Well, I would say that regarding the last one, the difficulty in publishing these reports on insights from students and teachers in journals, for example, I think that there's a recognition, there's more and more recognition of the importance of publishing research and insights into practices, into good examples of good practice. This has been recently discussed by lots of different groups of academics, and next week I'm participating in an event, and one of the editors, the editor of the ELTJ journal, is invited to be there and to participate in the discussion of what possibilities there are for us to publish these reports on practitioner research. So I think that there's potential, and there's a need for examples of good practice around the world to be published and to be shared. Right, so the research I'm doing has been informed widely by exploratory practice. So I don't know if you know what exploratory practice is, but in case you don't, so these are the principles. It's a framework for doing research and for doing, in a way, it's a framework for everything, for teaching, learning and research at the same time. And it's quite flexible, and it follows 7 principles. And these are the principles. So the focus is on understanding, working for understanding with the students in the classroom. So there's a difference, and I think that this is a key point in exploratory practice. I think that it has usually been contrasted with action research, which is a very famous way of doing teacher research. And I think that the difference is that the focus in exploratory practice is on understanding before making any changes, whereas in action research the focus is on changing, identifying a problem and trying to solve it through research. So I think that this is a very important epistemological difference, and it's not just a difference in wording. And I'm really interested in working for understanding before really changing anything. Right, the idea is to work all together for mutual development and to make it a continuous enterprise, and in order to minimize the research burden. Sometimes, if the teacher is the only one who is doing research and has this idea that there's a problem that needs to be solved, she or he will ask the students to do certain things, and sometimes that could be a burden for students. And so the idea of working following these principles is to make that research burden minimal in a way. Right. So this is another definition which you can read. It's basically the same, but in one sentence. A very long sentence. One sentence,
With lots of one sentence with lots of full stops.
Yeah, sorry. So maybe not a, yeah, you're right. No, not really.
No.
No. Semicolons and yeah. Right.
I might not have time to, I'm reacting in my head to this fact that actual research doesn't require understanding. I might not have time to challenge that later, but bear in mind I will challenge it with you sometimes in my
Sure, please. No, of course it involves, and this is something that Burns and David Noonan have recently said. Of course, it's working for understanding, but there's a clear focus on working for change, and so I think that the interesting point of this is that first, let's focus on understanding, and then on change if it's necessary. So, and it's the idea of moving away from conceptualizing the world as problem solution, in a problem solution pattern. I think that could be problematic, but I'm happy to, it's contestable. I really like this quote by Nigel Tubbs. He's a philosopher from Winchester, actually, in the UK, and I think that what he says ties very well with exploratory practice. Right, and so for an MA, I did exploratory practice, but so what I wanted to explore was the connection between a pedagogy for autonomy and exploratory practice. I could see that there were connections between the two, and I wanted to explore that connection better. And so basically it was me exploring that after I did the MA, collecting data and asking the students to explore their own questions, doubt, issues about the syllabus content. So for this PhD, I thought that I'm doing at the moment, I'm in my second year and I have 2 more years. So for the PhD, I thought, well, I want to use exploratory practice as well, but I want to explore something different. And this time, I really want to explore something myself, my own doubts. At the same time as the students are exploring their own questions and doubts, I also want to explore something. Will this be possible? And so, so this is, let's say, something new that I added, and these were some of my interests, my questions. So the relationship between democracy and pedagogy, the role of higher education, whose and what knowledge counts, how deeply learners can get to in the exploration of their own questions, and criticality. So I had all these ideas while I was collecting data. And so eventually I had to choose one because I thought that it was too broad. And I thought that the concept of criticality was quite broad, and actually I had the feeling that it encompassed all the other concepts or all my other interests. So that's what I did. I explored, and I am exploring, the different meanings of the critical or criticality, and I want to explore that and to see how they realize in the classroom. So at the same time, so while I was exploring the critical, my students while learning, teaching as well, each other, and exploring the syllabus in ways that are meaningful to them. Right. So these are the three modules or short courses I have been doing practitioner research with at Coventry University. So the pre-sessional EAP course in China last summer, academic essay writing in term 1 this year, and academic essay writing term 2, the one that has just finished. So yeah, there's a big difference, as you can see, between the hours I spend with the students in China and the hours I spend with students here during these modules. And also the nationalities, so all Chinese and then a variety of different nationalities. Yeah. Right, so this is just one example of a normal pedagogic activity, task that we do in class in order to learn how to write an academic essay. And what I want to show is that this normal pedagogic practice, in a way, is useful also for me to explore my questions and for the students to discover what their doubts, what their questions are about academic essay writing. So there's different steps. There are different steps. The first one is students' engagement with their knowledge of the subject matter via dialogue. So, so basically, there's a question, and the students discuss it in groups, bringing their own experience and knowledge of that topic. And these are the tools I have used to gather data. And so to convert that, whatever we do in the class, into data. And so what I did was to voice or video record what they were saying. So that's something that they know from day one. I explained this to them, and everything seems okay. The second step, the students have to read and discuss sources in connection to that topic that they discussed. And they have to identify the thesis and the supporting arguments in each of the sources. So, and the data I get is not only the voice and video records, but also some homework. Sometimes some of these students send me this, via email as homework. So I have those documents as well as data. In the third step, the students have to choose one aspect, one argument of the discussion that they feel strong about. So here is their interest again. So something that I really encourage them to think of all the arguments that they have been discussing, to pick the one that they really like and are interested in exploring. And so the data I got is the essay drafts that they send me, and also the reflective writing. I ask the students to send me a reflective piece of writing every week, telling me their doubts, their questions, and I have some examples. So I think that really shows this moment when the students choose what to focus on. And finally, to develop that focus in an essay, so I do have the final essay. And also I have some extra data, such as drawings and my own reflective diary. I keep a teaching and research diary every day, or after every class. And the drawings, at the beginning of my PhD, I thought that asking the students or involving them in doing some art work could be good for those who find it difficult to express their views in writing, even though this is academic essay writing. But I thought that it would be interesting to see if there's something else, some subconscious views that they could not tell me, but can be expressed through drawings. And I have very interesting drawings actually. I will show you as well. Right, so that was an example. And now I will go through very quickly through 3 or 4 conceptualizations of the critical. So there are others, but I decided to pick only 3 or 4 to show you the different meanings of the critical I have encountered. So one of the meanings is, I wanted to see, well, so what's the critical, or what's criticality in critical EAP? And so one of the most important people in critical EAP is Sarah Benesch from America. And also Chan recently, also an American Chinese scholar, has published a book following the ideas of Benesch. So both of them agree that the critical is this concept of, or idea of, engaging students in incorporating or let's say discussing, let's say, their own ideas and their own beliefs and their experience of the world, to incorporate that in whatever they are discussing in the class. But also, and this is connected to some conversations that we've had with Hillary, so EAP is concerned with challenging neoliberal discourses, market-driven practices, and the status quo. So, so this is also part of critical EAP, and a very interesting. So, and I think that this is very much connected with this idea of working for changing the structures and changing these practices and these discourses. However, if we follow the exploratory practice principles, we perhaps, in order to be critical, we don't need really to change, but to be aware, as I say here, not necessarily for change, but to be aware of the world we are in, and to engage and to question and challenge those practices. Right. So, and what I want to say is that I have, even though I haven't analyzed the data yet, I have just finished collecting all the data, I can see that I have data that can show or realize these features. Yeah. So I will show you examples. Can you? I don't know if you can see that. So this is a snapshot from Moodle, and basically what I want to show is that some of the reading materials were engaging in universities and academic freedom and corporate university. So these were some of the topics I suggested that the student explore if they wanted.
Can you read those again, for example?
Yes. Yes. So engineering in universities, so the students had to, this text was about the relationship between the industry and the university. And this one is about academic freedom and the corporate university. So the difference between marketized universities and public universities. So these were just options and just to practice in class, and these are topics that I suggested among other topics. And I think that that's an example of perhaps this.
Sorry, just a question. My friend who's fellow from the Open University calls the essay a power genre, and a neoliberal power genre. How do you conciliate teaching critical EAP with teaching essay writing?
How can I?
How can you conciliate critical EAP with teaching the power genre of essay writing?
Well, I think that they're really much connected actually, because writing an essay is expressing a view, is, positioning yourself somehow and presenting an understanding of an issue of, yes,
I'm just thinking about the actual task of writing an essay
yeah,
is the power genre task.
yeah,
In critical, it's been criticised for being, should we still do it? Because we're imposing
yeah.
a neoliberal power
Right.
genre
No,
to
well,
our students.
well,
why is it imposing a neoliberal?
What do students who come out of university? We had this discussion.
Yeah, should we have questions at the end? Should we do that?
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry.
No, just we had this discussion with the assessment day
We'll have a few
yesterday.
minutes at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just
sure.
I got to go.
Well, yeah.
Sorry.
If you go on to Clark.
We can talk. Yeah, sure. Right. But thank you for the question. Right. And this is an example of the students discussing, this is in China, and sharing ideas and their own development using posters. Sorry. Questions? More pictures? Right. So this is the second exploration into the critical or criticality, which is critical thinking. So I left critical EAP apart and I concentrated on critical thinking. And so there is this view that critical thinking and it's a modernity construct and a Western construct. And I think that this is important because it might be possible that some students have this conceptualization of critical thinking as the Western way of thinking and our way of thinking if they are from China, for example. So I think that this polarized way of seeing the world is not very useful, and I think that it is important perhaps to make students aware that critical thinking is not only this, but there are other meanings of the critical or criticality. So I think that this is important, and I'm sure that in my data I have some information that can show these views from the students. And the last two that I will show you today are in the context of education in general, not in EAP, not in higher education, but in general in education. So Brown, in 1998, argues that critical thinking actually dates back to philosophy, to the critical traditions, the Greek critical traditions of Socrates, and it is very much related to dialogue and democratic principles. And I think that this very much connects with what Benesch and Chan said. And Matt Pegg, almost 20 years before, claims, I think that this is a very interesting concept or conceptualization of critical thinking. He says that in order for a person to be a critical thinker, that person needs to have specialist knowledge or expertise knowledge. And I think that this is interesting in EAP and in general, because it sheds light into the different degrees. This question that I had at the beginning of my PhD, that how far can students get in understanding any questions in a course at university, in a language course? How deep can they get? Can their understandings be? And I think that by following these steps of discussing in groups and engaging their own understandings of topics, reading the literature, discussing it, picking one aspect of it, and going deep into developing that aspect, I think that that's a way perhaps of getting there, where Matt Pegg says, getting more specialized knowledge. So, this is another snapshot from Moodle that shows here the students' own questions in a way and exploration. So Jorge on language of caution. So for him in particular, after sending each other emails and after he discovered that his issue was cautious language, he decided to explore that. And so he worked on that, he made a presentation, and then he posted it on Moodle. Sergio on punctuation and linking words, those were his problems. And we could identify these because of the emails, the reflective writings they sent me, and because of their drafts, essay drafts. And Marek's summary of key topics covered in class. Before the test, before the first piece of coursework, he was the one who made a summary for everybody. So I didn't do it, he did. So, in term 1, some of the students discussing. And this is one of the last one, I think it's the last, yes, example of a reflective writing. So these are the kinds of emails they send me every week, reflecting on issues. And so this student, I changed his name, so he sent me this, and then another day he sent me this. What is interesting is that this taps into what I was saying before about the focus and what Matt Peck says, specialized or expertise knowledge. So the most important thing that I've learned so far is to stay relevant to the essay question and not to go off topic. This is quite useful, as I discussed in the attached recording. So he sent me a recording describing a picture that he had drawn. The meaning behind my drawing is then also related to this. And I will show you the drawing. So basically this was his discovery. The argument, picking that argument and going deep into developing only one argument from a discussion, one idea, one point. So this was really important for him. And he says that the following week as well. So I feel, once in bold, that I'm actually putting forward my view of the debate rather than just the view that seems to be more popular. I now aim to practice the accumulation of vast amounts of research material as quickly as possible, and then to filter through it to supplemental arguments as necessary, but still leaving a lot of space for my own annotations of the reference material within the essay. What I want to avoid, as much as possible, is to rely on sources as the sole supplement of meaningful information within the essay. Rather, they should serve as a credible backbone for the support and formation of new ideas and perspectives that I will try to put forward in my essay. So I thought, well, this probably shows the importance of, this shows critical thinking, perhaps. So this is just one example. I haven't gone into the analysis of the data yet. Right, and so to summarize, what I've done as part of a PhD is practitioner research, and I have been working for understanding. That's the main purpose of doing this kind of research. Together with the students and myself, and both of us have had questions and had explored those questions in the classroom. So, ideas for discussion, but I'm sure that you will have ideas, references. Thank you very much, and questions.
How did you get ethics for all of the data collection?
Right, so that was something that I did, as you know, at the very beginning before starting the year. So in the summer, I contacted Marina, and she gave me all the information, and she asked me, to fill on all the forms, and I did all that, and then I received kind of an acceptance of that, and so
they agreed to let you take any piece of work from any period of time for a year.
Yes, I think I asked for 3 years, because that's the period of my PhD. So they said yes, So that has been accepted. And also, before every module, I contact the students and I explain to them and I give them forms what my research is about, and they have to sign it. But then at the end of it, at the end of the course or the module, I ask the students again to have a look at what they said, because some of them said no, yes, and to consider whether they want to change their views. Maybe after the experience, they change their views. So that's what I've been doing.
Interesting, Anna, thanks. How much time do you have to invest in sort of training the students or raising their awareness of the approach you want to take? And also, do you encounter any sort of resistance from students?
Right, thank
Sometimes
you.
it's not for everyone, possibly.
Sure, yeah. Well, actually, that's an issue. And I think I always wanted to explain things better. And I think I always felt it is unfair for me to waste time in the class, especially during the last 2 modules, which are for 10 weeks only. So I always say something very minimal, and I give them all the explanation in writing, and I ask them please to read it at home, and if they want to discuss it outside of the class, I am very happy to do so. And so I would say that, yes, there are students who really, I would say that whatever happens in the class, I take it as data, and I try not to really dwell into explanations of theory, and I think that things happen, and then when they have questions they ask. That's what I've been doing. And if they are resistant,
Maybe you haven't
definitely some students, some 1 or 2, always seem a little bit, yes, that they would prefer if I play the role of the teacher, giving the right answer, So I can see that, and I can see how, if the module was longer, that could change. Yes, but when the module is quite short, it's quite difficult to change those views.
If I was an EAP student on this course, I would resist. And not because of the role of the teacher, the power roles. It's not that I would feel that I wanted to be told what to do, but simply I wouldn't feel that I was being prepared for my studies.
Right.
Because what you're training these people to do is to write something quite unlike anything they would ever be asked to write in their subject disciplines. It doesn't seem to me to be EAP.
Right. I should say here that always I give them options. Some of the options I showed were some of them, but there's always one question. I try to include questions that relate to what the students do in their own, and you can ask the
But this
students.
emphasis on personal opinion and views and
Right.
everything, that you don't really find that in the disciplines. When students start studying their disciplines, people aren't saying, and what do you think about? They're saying, what is known in the field? What
Yeah,
is
of
the
course.
scholarly evidence?
What I want to say, but it's not what do you think. That's not what I do. What I want to highlight is that whenever they read all the literature, when they find something that they are interested in, and they develop that idea, the way they develop that idea is, in a way, their position, their way of identifying what is important for them.
Yes, but
So
that's
it's not that they are doing a
important,
summary of
but
the
that
whole.
would be my point. I don't think in the disciplines lecturers want to know what's important for the student. They want to know what's important for the field, or what are the
What's important for the question?
yes, and what's important
You
for
give
the
it a question,
question.
aren't you?
Yes.
You find things which help you
Yeah,
answer
but
that question.
I do want my students to eventually come up with a sort of stance, a position towards what they review, some sort of critical position
yeah.
at the end of the essay.
Yes, but it's
Well, you
but
don't
it's
just
but it, but
repeat
it,
the
but it's not their opinion on the topic. It's their critical review
No,
of
of course.
of the
But, yeah,
of the
but
right
That's
of,
what I
of the
mean.
Their
source.
stance is their opinion.
Exactly.
Yes, but it seems to me that you're asking them to pick out from all they read some idea that they want to pursue, that appeals to them as being, you know,
Yes, but
could you
they-
give an example of the
Yeah.
kind of topics they write
Yes,
about?
yes, I have. I can send you their emails, their essays. Sorry. So I think I don't have any here in
No,
this
but you
PowerPoint
can
presentation.
think of
But
the
yes,
kind of things they write about.
But I do agree with him. It's not that I'm asking them to give their opinion, but I think that by choosing what to present, they are showing what is important for them in the field, in what they are reading.
And that's what they do in all writing, like dissertations.
Absolutely.
They narrow it down very much, don't they? We
Yeah.
always say it's too broad, you can't talk about everything.
Exactly.
So they pick out certain aspects of that field
Yeah.
and say what's been said about it before and critically review it. You know, and that one thesis,
Exactly.
that final statement is, you know, a summary of everything that we've done, and that's a thesis.
But that's
And that
not
thesis
what,
is
that's
their
not what
own
the
in some ways, it's their
what
own.
Hannah's, what they're writing, as I understand it, that's not the kind of writing that Hannah's.
I think maybe I haven't explained it well, but this is what I mean. It's not that they are saying I think, and this is what I think that what they choose shows, and this is what I always want to tell them, because they say, well, so can we really say what we think? Well, no, it's not your opinion, what you think about this topic, but it's picking something that you are interested in and reading about it and putting it in some way, and in the way you express it, that shows the way you go about it in a way, and it shows your position. So it's not, all the students will have a different approach to the way they write an essay. Yeah.
Actually, I have many questions and I'm interested in your topic. The first question is, what's your interest? It is critical thinking, teaching critical thinking through writing, or writing through critical thinking? This is the first question.
Mm-hmm.
Second one, as you have used many research tools, I think 2 or 3, I don't know how many, 2 I think. Do you consider the email, the homework through you send them, they send them back to you through email? Is it reliable?
Reliable.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
because since they can use the computer or the internet.
Right.
and
Yeah,
then-
the second question, I will start with the second one. I
Okay.
think it's quite interesting, especially in exploratory practice, because one of the principles is trust. I think that we cannot do anything if we don't take learning, teaching and researching seriously. And I think that I show that with my attitude to the students, and I trust them. If they don't trust me and I don't trust them that they are doing something because they really want to learn, then there's no point in doing anything. So I do trust, and I think they are reliable.
Some people may reject this.
Sorry?
Research. Some people may reject your this research too. Maybe they seems to be not very matter of validity. Okay,
Right,
They
so
may reject.
what do we need for it to be valid, do you think?
You said trust. How many? You can, of course, we should trust everybody, but sometimes they. To what extent? Okay, this is the research methodology.
Sure.
And you didn't answer my first
Yes,
question.
sorry. Yes, and it was about
Do you teach
criticality and reading.
critical thinking through writing, or writing through, or both?
I think that I was interested in what we mean in higher education in the UK by the critical, and I think that it's such a broad term, and I think that it is important that in my practice, and in probably most of the people in these rooms practice, there are examples and features of the critical, but I really wanted to explore what those were and to go deep into analysing that. And definitely writing an essay is per se, it's a critical act. You have to engage with the literature, you have to, so yeah, I think that's.
Very, very interesting. A number of questions, I'll try to restrict them to one here. Just in relation to what you were saying about the perception of critical thinking as being a westernized, modernized construct. Obviously not that modern, dates back pre-Enlightenment. But I was wondering, did you find a difference between your cohorts in China, who were all East Asian, and the ones that you dealt with here in Coventry, not all of whom were East Asian? So this goes to this core distinction between the logos as being sort of central to Western thinking, and the Tao, which is a much more binarized, harmonized concept of ontology being at the core of East Asian thinking.
No, thank you. I think that that's a really interesting question. And I think that, and I have had a chat with one of the students from China yesterday here, and he was telling me that by coming here and discussing ideas with students from different parts of the world, that he got a different view of what the critical is. And actually, he told me all of these meanings of the critical. And perhaps, well, when they were in China, perhaps they were a little bit afraid of engaging in discussing social issues. Some of them, some others were not. So I think at this point I cannot really answer your question. I really need to go back to all the data and to kind of analyze it and look at it deeply. But I do have that as a question in my mind that I really want to look at.
Well, I suppose just to drill down a bit further, I mean, this understanding of criticality or Socratic dialogue as being westernized and modernist sort of emerged out of deconstruction, which was obsessed about power structures and is largely been debunked now. And I think people realise obviously sort of Socratic dialogue or Platonic abstraction applies in any context if you want to try and get a broad analysis of anything, be it the hard sciences right through to the humanities. But I was wondering, I suppose, in relation to the cohorts that you teach, you know, whether there was more resistance to criticality in the solely East Asian context where the Tao notion of prioritising harmony and not being critical would be more prevalent. I guess that's my question.
I think, yes.
And are they merely sort of framing it as we're rejecting this as Western when really they're rejecting it because it rejects harmony?
Yeah, I see what you mean, yes. Well, I think that students, in a way, you know, EP is about life, above all. And I think that that's something that these students in China really appreciated, sort of, which has to do with harmony and all this. But I think that they are also critical, but perhaps in a different way. And so, yeah, that's...
In a way they don't even acknowledge, perhaps.
Perhaps, yes, perhaps. But I cannot really say this, you know, with certainty until I look at the data, I think. Yes.
You mentioned critical EAP, and I think that kind of related to a lot of what you're saying. I mean, do you think it's our job as EAP teachers to change or to challenge what goes on out there, or is it our job just to prepare them for something that exists? You know, should we be looking to change the reality of?
That's a really interesting question. Thank you.
Mm.
That's a really important question. I think that it is important to create space in the classroom for students to be aware of what's going on in the world, and to engage and to critique and to challenge ideas, and to understand, with the purpose of understanding these discussions that are going on and issues in the world. And I think that by seeing how, by giving the example in the class and showing them that the power relationships, perhaps that I'm positioning myself as a student as well many times, as a researcher, as a teacher, and that I give them space to voice and to their ideas, etc. I think that that's also a way of challenging these power
But then
structures.
ultimately there is a power. You know, the module will end and you'll say, you're a 2-2, you're a 2-1, you're a you know, you will have a power over them. You've failed. You know, so there is that.
Oh yeah.
There's still that
Yes.
ultimate power, isn't
Oh
there?
yes,
So
absolutely. Yes.
Isn't it better just to accept that and get them to deal with it?
Well, I think no. I think that there's a big difference in attitude and in the way we do things. I think that I would like to treat my students with respect and with trust, and to give them space to, and then they know obviously that then if I have to give a mark and to grade their work, of course I will be serious. So because learning is serious, and I present learning in that way, and I think that they would never expect me to do something different in that respect. Yes. Thank you.
You might have covered this in the early part of your talk, because I came in late, which I apologise. But did you gather any data on students' expectations at the beginning of the course, in terms of what they were expecting to get out of the course as learners, and how they, because you were talking about, obviously a lot has to do with your relationship with them as a teacher. You know, do you have any sort of data on that?
That's a good question. I think I did that in China because I have more time. And I usually, during the first class, I usually ask them, well, what do you expect? Can you discuss it with your classmates? And I record that. Now, I haven't looked at that recently, so I really can't remember. But what I do say is that it would be that what I prioritize is working together, working for understanding, taking learning and teaching and research seriously. So all these things, but quite briefly. And what they expect, they do this in their reflective writing. They express what they want. I could easily see it when some of them might show frustration at certain practices or something that has happened. And they express it in their essays, in their reflective writing. And so I think that this is a very good way of developing that relationship and trying to respond to their needs in a way through writing.
I was going to carry on from that with their language level, because
Yes.
the reflective writing I've had with my learners,
Yeah.
their language isn't high enough to express this level. So I wondered how you were dealing with their language level, because the extract that you showed was excellent. Oh, I mean, my learners, maybe, I don't know, maybe something, but they're not that level, and the learners I've taught in China are not that level. So how does that develop? And if they're painting and drawing pictures, how do they then develop their English?
Right. So the painting they do it only once in the whole course, because obviously my idea is to minimize the research burden. So I was very careful, and I haven't done anything extra but that. All the other, is the normal pedagogic practices that we do. And regarding the level, I do agree with you. Actually, that was outstanding. But all the others, perhaps, are not as good. But still, I think that it's a great opportunity to learn and to practice the language. So every time they send me an email, I copy and I copy it and I paste it in a Word document, and I start making changes and comments, and I come back to them, and little by little their English gets better because I'm giving feedback on grammar as well. So yes, I think that actually that really helps them.
But maybe it's not the quality of the language, it's the language that they can produce at that particular level. So whatever reflections it might be, it may not be expressed as clearly and coherently as that one, but whatever level is appropriate.
Yes.
It's all valid, isn't it? It's all reflective.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And many times I ask questions like, what do you mean? Do you mean this and that? Or do you mean this? Please come back to me. And so then they send me another email, no, what I meant was this. And so I think that that's really, really valuable for the students. I don't know
What are they actually reflecting on? Did you say they were reflecting on things like punctuation?
They reflect on their learning in general, their learning process. So if they are writing an essay, they probably, on that week, they reflect on how difficult it was, what they did, and what they found interesting, and what they would like to do. So I ask them 3 questions. So what have you done today in class or this week? What have you learned? And what do you think you will do for the next class?
So it's not really the writing; it's the process of thinking that you care about, rather than the writing itself.
I care about both, really.
Because the writing, that kind of writing, is not the kind of writing they'll produce elsewhere.
I think that kind of writing is not an essay. It's not what they are going to be asked to produce.
I mean,
later.
they're business students. They're not going to be writing much in the way of essays anyway.
Yeah. But I think that reflecting in writing is a way of articulating your ideas and thoughts.
It's the ideas and thoughts you're interested in rather than the actual writing, because then
No, because I also correct the grammar, and I think that by practicing whatever they write, even poetry. I mean, I have been in some talks about that. How writing anything is in a way helping you to write whatever you have to write for an assignment. So it's a.
I'm not sure if I'm convinced about that actually. I think it might lead them up the garden path actually as to how they should be writing. But I can see that obviously thinking is a useful, is important skill.
Yes, but also putting into words those thoughts. I think it is important, and they need that. They come from different contexts. They are not sometimes used to writing that much, and so I think that that's an opportunity to really develop writing in a different way that I think can be helpful. But yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
What about if someone wants to do an action research? What important points is he going to focus on, and what change is he expecting to bring?
If someone engages in action research
related
to my topic,
topic.
Right. So if someone, if a teacher would like to investigate criticality through or via action research, what's the difference? But
I mean, we have certainly reached certain data that which important data should this researcher in action research focus on? And what changes do you expect he's going or she's going to reach in the end?
I don't know if I can answer that question. I think that you have to go through the process in order to learn. But I know that if I engage in action research, the difference would be that I will have my questions in my mind. I will think of the methodology I want to use to get that data, to go about the data, and I would ask the students to do certain things that I would need to. And I would expect a kind of change. I would look at it with this idea of, well, so is there anything wrong? Do I really need to change something? Whereas perhaps using this as a framework, I think that it is a little bit less intrusive than perhaps action research. But actually, what I want to say is, I wouldn't like to really talk badly about action research. This is not my intention. My intention, actually, is to say that the focus on exploratory practice perhaps is on understanding, and I kind of sympathize with that aim for education, in education, and I think that it's great that now teacher research is becoming more popular, and I think it is important. As I said before. So either action research or exploratory practice or any other framework should be good.
What I understood is that explanatory research is a kind of background for action research. This is what I understood.
Right, I see. Right, yes, it's a kind of, it could be considered in that way. However, yes, it's understanding, but if after getting some insights into the situation, you realize that a change is needed, then you can do that change as well, together with the students as part of a community, if you want, not on your own as a teacher, perhaps. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know, sorry, what time is it?
I think it's a lovely idea that you encourage the students to create meaning through different modes, in terms of multimodality and in a multimodal area. And I was wondering, how would you analyze this data of pictures? Would you take into account colors or shapes? It's also very interesting in terms of different cultures being represented through the images, and maybe adding some kind of music or audio as well as a way of creating meaning in different modes. I think it's a lovely idea.
Yeah, I thank you for that. Yes, I think it is an interesting idea, but it is a question that I still don't know how I'm going to answer, about how I'm going to analyze those drawings. I really have to develop in the next year my methodology so that it really is something that makes sense and it's not a little bit of different things. I think that I wouldn't like that to happen. I think that it has to be really thought through. So yes, that's something that hopefully in the next year I will be able to give more information about.
I'm sure you did very good.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
It is 2 o'clock.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you
You've got a
very much.
meeting, yes, yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.